when the Prime Minister before the last election promised to get rid of the long gun registry, many people, especially people that were less involved in the intricacies of the firearms law as it stands, assumed that would mean getting rid of the Firearms Act and getting rid of the possession and acquisition certificate, which is a piece of plastic given to you by the government that allows you to own your own property, and the absence of that provides you with a criminal charge potential. So what's happened is a lot of people that had these prohibited firearms, especially older gentlemen, my generation, maybe a little bit older, are now getting visits from the RCMP saying they have to turn in their guns because they didn't renew their licenses. And nobody knew that. So what we have to ask for this coming 5 years while we form the 1000 is that we need to decriminalize the simple ownership of firearms. The simple ownership of firearms, the simple desire to own firearms with no law intent to break the law should not be in any way a part of the criminal code. At worst, it's a property issue, and property under the Constitution is a provincial responsibility. In fact, the gun people community, led by the National Firearms Association, the late Dave Tomlinson, went to Parliament, went to the Supreme Court arguing that, and we lost on a split decision. Well, of course, when Quebec wanted to form their own registry, they found out that they were on the wrong side of that argument, which was somewhat funny. But it's not funny overall, because provincial legislation doesn't put you in penitentiary for hard time, whereas federal legislation does. So this has to be understood that none of that has changed. We still have to be licensed. We're still essentially criminals being given a license to exist in our hobby. And I personally find that offensive. Everybody I know finds that offensive, that I would be considered as a criminal, because when a policeman looks at this, he looks at it as a potential criminal, as an unconvicted client of the police force. And we're not a client of the police force. I'm not, no, none of you are. By and large, that's not the way it goes. So as we move forward, we have to understand the power of semantics, because the Prime Minister wants to keep the right to prohibit firearms. I have no love of that particular right and power, but we have to go back to 1968 to get rid of it, and it's going to be hard to go back that far. Once laws get that entrenched, they get very, very hard to remove. Ask any lawyer, and they'll tell you it's really difficult. Not impossible, and it's worth trying, but very difficult. But the real problem is the fact that they can take guns that have been lawfully owned for year after year after year. If they stop on the 49th parallel, well, it's kind of a no harm, no foul event. But once they're in here and they're people's hands, they're being used for lawful purposes, they should be allowed to keep that. They should be allowed to pass it on to the next generation. My daughter can't inherit my gun collection. She can inherit one gun. I don't know what she can do with it, but not the rest. My granddaughter is probably totally out of luck. My wife's target pistol, because my wife's quite petite, was a small pistol, which was then prohibited. So she can't give that to her daughter, because her daughter was only 17 when these prohibitions came in. So she's being discriminated against by age, because you have to be 18 to register a restricted firearm or a prohibited firearm, for that matter, in the country of Canada. And these are the steps that you will see in every jurisdiction over the world. These people, the bureaucrats, meet at meetings. This is not a conspiracy, it's just a fact. They get together, different justice departments, and they compare notes. And every time somebody gets a win that works for them, it'll move to another country. So we get stuff from Sweden. We get Kim Campbell, I believe, was following the Brady example quite closely. We see things like 10-Shot magazines started in California, ends up in Ottawa. How that happened, I don't know, but they happen. So what we have to do is be always aware, and we have to fight this. Now, to fight this, we need people that are going to really commit to it. We have fought this fight for the last 50 years, and I'll bet you we haven't had 50 people at any given time. I mean, there's days I haven't been able to fight. There's days when, because of family or work or other things in my life, I have not been able to take part in some of these fights. We need enough people. If we have 1,000 people that are willing to commit, willing to learn what they need to know, understand our history, and never take no for an answer, we have the potential of stopping this. It is a lot harder, as I said earlier, to unwind a law than it is to pass a new one. And it's a negative thing, and politicians want to be seen to be doing something, if I can put air quotes around the something. They do not want to be perceived as negative by unpassing laws. And that was the problem with the long gun registry, and you got to give Mr. Harper and Mr. Taves full marks for doing that, because they took a lot of heat. Thank you.